Hey guys, my name is Rai. Today I wanted to go through how I did my plus 19 Motherlode on my Vengeance Demon Hunter. This is a very clean run and probably the most clean Motherlode I've ever had, and I thought it was worth a VOD because one of my most common requests for my videos is to go through some of the skips in this dungeon. This involves skipping the Peacekeeper, this involves skipping the mini boss, and this involves skipping the last two war machines at the end of the key. In this run, I'm going to go through every gather, every pull, how I use stops and coordinated, and how I lived this entire dungeon with only cheating once, but it was because I tabbed out to MDT. This is a pretty aggressive route, similar to the one that you might have seen in TGP. I'm going to walk you through how I gather it. First, I'm going to hit these laborers with a soul cleave once so that my druid doesn't get threats. I'm going to hunt and brand these middle assassins. I'm going to Feldev here and as well glaive the left pack. Once all of that is gathered, I am making sure I'm holding on to those flame sigils until things are grouped. Once my brand is rolling, I'm going to have some pretty sturdy defensiveness into this pull, and I am holding on to my metamorphosis. As you've seen from some of my videos, the reason why I hold meta so long is that you don't want to overlap meta and brand. Despite it being more damage, one of the major key things here is I don't want to randomly just proc cheat death, as I am fighting a ton of mobs with no spirit bomb, meaning that I do have capped frailty right now. And as well, I want to make sure that I have that sheet available for something that can go wrong later in the key. Almost every time I'm in here without saying a word, it's like clockwork, all my tanks seem to cheat on this pull. I'm not really sure why. I understand there's like a lot of melees, a lot of queuing up, but as I get into this pull, as you can see, I'm pretty self-sustaining and pretty sturdy. I do get into that second Feldev, and as well, the pack's almost dead. There's nothing really special about my gather in here. One thing that you'll note that I do in a lot of my videos and I talk about quite frequently is making sure I hold on to those fiery sigils. If I use those fiery sigils early, means I'm not going to apply them to all the mobs, means I'm going to be missing out on important damage, and as well, I'm going to be missing out on all the leash effect from the fiery sigil. I find Vengeance Demon Hunters struggle a ton with threat this season, and one of those things that I note, and I'll continue to reiterate, is if you use your Fiery Sigil early to gather mobs and get them in combat, you're going to have a hard time with threat later in the pull. Even when DPS are doing 20-30 million, I still don't have an issue with threat as long as I make sure I hold on those Fire Sigils. Now, I'm going to pause here for a sec, and I'll walk you through how you should be skipping the first Peacekeeper. The reason why we skip this Peacekeeper is it's absolutely deadly and a gigantic waste of time. Given that it only gives about 2% count and takes a lot of resource, it isn't a very good efficient priority target in your keys. There are some routes which opt to play the first Peacekeeper in the dungeon, but I'm going to tell you why that this is useless. The trash count after the first boss is hyper efficient. All of those drills are very easy to handle one by one, as well as very easy to chain. These Peacekeepers are not easy to chain, have to fight vendors and assassins with them, and can be quite deadly on your tank and your healer. They take a ton of healing and tanking resource, and if anybody is to mess up a stop, any overlap with the charge shield and the assassin can easily kill somebody. The trick is that you want to actually be meld skipping this pack. You don't actually need Misery, but I'm going to be Misery in the left pack. I'm going to be caging the caster next to the Peacekeeper on the right, and you're going to be seeing I'm going to leap forward and use both charges of my Vengeful Retreats to get some distance. As soon as I do that, I'm going to be getting myself a ton of distance away from these mobs, making sure that I can introduce a Shadow Meld into the skip. I leap and I give my party no time and I hit Shadow Meld. My party should be through, you don't have to wait for long, and as long as you get through that way, you should have tons of time to get into this pack. We did opt to commit less to this pull in the dungeon as there's a ton of kicks. I'm going to show you how I do this pull. Again, I brand early, I fire sigil late for threats, and I'm hitting this Extractor as it's my priority target in the pull. This is a pull that does require some stop coordination, and you're going to see here that I Nova, and then I grip into Druid Beam. You're going to see that I'm holding on to my silence for a very long time here because I want to silence outside of the other one of my stops. Silence is also very good if you have to move during this for an Extractor, but because we are in Discord and are coordinated, I'm able to call and orchestrate every single stop in this pack. The way I like to do it is that I always like to link up Druid chains with that beam. Vengeance Demon Hunter chains with that solar beam. The reason why is they are kind of synced on cooldown, and making it so that you can grip into beam every time makes it so that your Druid can also always have them stacked up for all the mobs to be hit. One important thing to note is you're going to see that I randomly pulled these 3 mobs away from this tank. The reason why we do this is to bring funnel into boss for the mage, but the easiest way to do this is if you just taunt one of the rat mine guys, he's actually going to come running to you. If you taunt the Earth Shaper or you throw a glaive at it, you will pull this Extractor. So I'm going to back up a frame and show you exactly what I mean. You're going to see here that I am targeting the mine rat, and I am going to be using taunt on him to get him away from that Extractor. This is really cool, and I just found out about this. I think it's absolutely great as it frees up a lot of count in this dungeon. This is a very small pull that's very easy to bring into boss. As you're going to see here, I kick the Earth Shaper, and as well, I'm calling subsequent kicks onto the boss. I pull this boss with Brand, and I choose and opt to play him in this corner. You guys have probably done this boss 100 times, so I'm not going to really talk through it too much or really explain what I'm trying to do, but I will show you one really cool trick that you may or may not have seen. All of the kickballs that spawn around the room are CCable, including the ability for me to use Sigil of Chains to get them grouped. You're going to see that on the first set because they were already also close. We don't do anything with them, and all we're kind of doing here is kicking and making sure we get them in. But we are waiting as long as humanly possible to get that 6th ball kicked in because it's a large damage increase. Remember, if you're kicking them all in at once, you're going to cap out on that damage increase in this boss very quickly, versus if you go to 5 stacks and then wait until almost expiration, you can almost double the duration of the maximum debuff from 5 to 6. This is a massive DPS gain, and if you haven't been doing this already with your team or with your friends, I would suggest giving it a try as it's really going to speed up the actual kill time of this boss. Okay, so here's the cool trick. You're going to see I drop a Sigil Chains here, and it actually sucks all the balls into one convenient place where my DPS players or my healer can kick all the balls right into the boss. This is an awesome time save and a DPS save because your DPS are going to have to be moving less for the balls, and nobody's going to panic on where they are, who's going to kick. You can do this every other set unless you're running Cycle of Binding, which I think you might be able to get up for every single one. But in this dungeon, I am opting to run Last Resort just as a failsafe as well as my regular build, so I don't have anything too kind of crazy set up here. Every single time the phase ends, I am back into this corner and making sure that I'm in a place where my team can collect the dodgeballs. I don't really have to talk too much more about this fight. I think like from a tanking perspective, it's pretty easy. I'm following my single target rotation here, using Fracture into Soul Cleave, and a Fracture and a Soul Cleave, and I'm using my Brand and Metamorphosis offensively on this boss. You'll see it on the middle of my screen, and I had a viewer ask about this, that Go Attack mode, Weak Aura. That's actually from my tome from Priory. So it does have 2 modes in the trinket, and I have been just kind of keeping it on whatever mode I kind of feel comfortable with. If I keep it on the defensive mode, I'm obviously going to get a small absorb shield, and when I go into damage amps or need the damage, I'm going to get a ton of crit, which is also a ton of defensive value. The Signet of the Priory is amazing. I really recommend picking it up if you haven't already. It's a ton of damage and a very, very good stat stick. You can see there I committed that Sigil Change, which I'm actually going to regret on the next pack. The reason why I'm going to regret it is Sigil of Chains is now going to be desunk from my Solar Beam from my Druid, and I end up calling for a stop here, but I end up not having Sigil of Chains. I am usually the de facto shot caller in all of my groups when I'm tanking and when I'm healing, so this time around I kind of made a blunder, and you're going to see here that we do let a couple kicks go off. In this next pull, I am pulling 1 Extractor with these Mine Rats and these Sappers. This is a pretty easy pull as it's only 2 kicks, but at the same time, please be mindful that when you are playing Extractor, you do have to have a lot of coordination, as these kicks, plus an Azerokk Extractor overlap, can definitely take out your team pretty quickly. I do hit that Chaos Nova, I don't have chains, I call for a beam here, and as well I'm dropping a Misery to buy myself a little bit of time. I almost do cheat to the Puddle on the ground, and I am going to be CCing here. I think at this point I'm calling to get Blinding Sleet into my Silence, and as well we're going to be going on to the next pull. Our stop is a little bit late there, and as well we call for Mage Stops, where I go in and hit my next CC. Ideally, I would like to save Silence for the next pull, so I'm trying my best to make sure that my team's coordinated in a place where I don't have to use it here. I think the only time I cheat this entire dungeon is right here, and you're going to see I'm opening up MDT. I'm opening up MDT because I changed this route quite a bit from my old route, and I want to see the exact count I needed, and there it is, I hit Last Resort. This is an extremely silly way to cheat, but luckily in the rest of the key I don't need it, as I don't think it procs once. Like I said, this was a 0 death run, so in this next pull, I am pulling another Extractor with Brand, and as you're going to see in there, I leap in, I hit Brand on my Extractor to start letting it roll, and when everything's grouped, I'm going to hit my Fiery Sigil. In this pull, I did decide to bring in a Stone Fury. The reason why I want to do it here is I wanted to break up the next two pulls. I grip into beam, and now I'm slowly kiting in and out of the Azerokk eruption on the ground. I am hitting the Extractor as that is my Arcane Mage's priority damage, and I'm making sure at all times I'm keeping up Ammo Aura, Spikes, and doing that single target rotation and AoE rotation, which is Fracture into Soul Cleave. You've probably seen some Yoda videos if you're watching this by now, if you're pretty much in the VDH, but the reason why we Fracture into Soul Cleave is we actually kind of focus entirely around soul generation when playing Eldrazi Reaver. Soul generation is the most important thing as opposed to Fury, and the reason why you want to do this is because your souls are going to start to overcap and you're going to get talent benefit from the Eldrazi Reaver tree, which gives you the Indomitable Shield. The nice thing about Soul Cleave build as opposed to Spirit Bomb build is you can always choose when you want to spend your souls to bring your Painbringer and your Frailty up. This means that on Deadly Tank Busters, when you're capped out on souls, most of the time you're sitting between 4 and 5, you can easily go on what's called a Soul Dump. A Soul Dump is when you are capped on Fury and capped on Souls, and you want to spend all your Soul Cleaves as opposed to Weaving in Fracture. The reason why you do this is for two reasons. One, to increase the frailty on your target if you're running Soul Crush, which is going to reduce the damage that you take and the damage that you deal increased to your target for 8 seconds. This does stack, so fights like Big Mama, you are going to get a massive amount of DR if you are Soul Cleave dumping. And the second reason is your Painbringer stacks for your souls generated and consumed. One single huge tip on Demon Hunter is that you don't actually always need a defensive to live a lot of tank busters. You can easily get away with just Soul Cleave spamming and dumping when you need to survive a pretty heavy hit. In this next pull, I'm going to show you how you skip the mini boss, and this is my most requested kind of content. I think a lot of routes have been being pulled off Raider.io, and people have been asking me, hey Ride, like, do you have a route that skips the mini boss? If so, what do you pull? What do you do? And at this point, you can see I'm already at 45%-ish, just by pulling all those Extractors, making sure I got those extra little Mine Rats, and as well doing that big pull to start. You do need a Priest or an Evoker, so this pull is skippable with a Rescue, and it can probably be done with other displacements such as like Wild Charge, etc. But over on this pull, you can actually Mind Soothe skip this pack, and then you can leap up to the right on Demon Hunter. Once you're up, you can actually also rescue up, etc. But my Priest is going to Mind Soothe right by. He's going to orchestrate our team to get on a 3-person mount, and he's going to be life gripping them up. You can replicate this again with an Evoker or any classes that have charges. For instance, if you do have a Rogue that has Shadow Step, a Druid that has Wild Charge, etc., they can all get up here just with that Demon Hunter. I haven't tried or reperformed it with my Monk. I think it'd be quite difficult as we'd need to get at least one other class that can, teleport up, whether it be like my Transcend or something. But I think you do need a Priest or an Evoker. So Preservation Evokers, if you're watching this, you can actually reperform the skip. The reason why we skip that mini boss, it is absolutely deadly and a huge waste of time. You want to go into this boss with DPS CDs, and that mini boss can absolutely truck. I think I've probably had half a dozen keys just ripped to that mini boss pull on various levels this season because, people are either missing stops, you don't have a Druid to soothe, etc. Azerokk is pretty straightforward, and I don't really have to talk about this too much. Whenever an empowered ad comes out, I'm alternating whether or not my group has damage on using my Reaver's Glaive on this target, which means that I'm either going to be saving Hunt, or as well spending that Fracture Soul Cleave combo when I'm capped on my Reaver's Glaive into the new target. One thing to note that I see a lot of tanks not do is they should be using their Sigil Chains, their Nova, and their Misery on these Earth Ragers to make sure that you're peeling for your team. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you're a healer or a ranged DPS player in this fight and you're getting fixated, as you see my Druid running around right now, it can be very, annoying to kind of be able to handle this boss. You're trying to do maximum damage to the ad while at the same time being able to move away from these Earth Ragers. I do always orchestrate that my Death Knights are using Death Grip quite frequently on this boss, and I'm using Sigil of Chains where I can to make sure that these Earth Rages are keeping away from my Druid. No matter what range DPS class you are or healer, this can get, like I said, very, very, very annoying. The next Earth Rager comes out, and immediately I'm starting to think about what I need to send into him. I sent my Reaver's Glaive early into the boss there because my team said they had quite a bit of damage, but as well I get a new one back and I'm able to spend into that Earth Rager. I'm really not too concerned or cautious about how I spend my glaives on this fight as I get them back pretty fast. I would say that you should always be hitting the ad though, as your tank damage is relevant on this boss fight. I would say that there are some bosses or some trash pulls where it is very important to make sure that you're building the priority target, as it can speed up the key. Vengeance Demon Hunter is excellent at priority damage, as it does scale with Wounded Quarry from the Eldrazi Reaver tree, meaning that the target that you are kind of funneling into with your Reaver's Glaive and your Reaper's Mark from your Reaver's Glaive is going to take an absolute ton of damage. This, in conjunction with hunt resets from your tier set, and as well as just keeping your Fiery Sigil down, your Imora active, and throwing that Elysian Decree when you can, is going to be a ton of priority and single target damage, and as well is going to splash onto all other cleave mobs. As you've probably seen a lot in this video or my other videos, I'm usually hitting a mob marked in orange. I have my blader set up so that priority mobs this season are all marked in orange. Good examples of this would be those Azerokk Extractors. In the next pull, you're going to see them be marked as the Masterminds in the lower area, and as well in other keys you might see them marked as Muscle or Hobgoblin in something like Cinderbrew. I would say that this is a great piece of advice I can give to Vengeance Demon Hunters that are trying to set up and do well this season, making sure that you set up your plater or taking another plater that already has these markers set up so that you're constantly hitting and building threat on these priority targets. This is going to help you immensely, as a lot of the time your arcane mages and your classes like Ellie Shamans that are going to be doing prio are going to be hitting these mobs. In this pull, I do a pretty nasty, massive pull here as I pull in, I think, 6 alchemists, a mastermind, a bunch of test subjects, and a weapon tester. I do pull this all in. I immediately brand early, I call for Pain Sup, and I Nova. You're going to see here that I grip immediately and I call for my Druid Solar Beam. I would not recommend doing this pull, and the reason why is I actually accidentally pulled 2 more alchemists than I kind of wanted to. However, you're going to see here how amazing this pull is with a coordinated group, as everything gets stopped for the entire duration of the pull. There's 6 alchemists in here, which is way too many to coordinate kicks on, so we're going to be alternating stops for the entire duration of the pull. I still haven't hit meta as we're pretty late in here, and I'm just calling stops to my team. I hit Misery, and I'm calling next for my Mage 2, and then my Druid 2 stops. You're going to see there's one for my Mage, here comes another one with Blast Wave, and then my Druid is going to Vortex, he's going to push, and he's going to go in for the Incapacitating Roar. We do have Solar Beam backup if we need to use it here, and I do say that I'm going to Nova first, just to get it on cooldown, and we're using whatever kind of stops we can. This pull was pretty deadly, but as you can see, with a good coordination of stops, it's pretty easy to kind of conquer. I still haven't even committed meta on this pull, and I'm going to be going over and pulling a lot of this trash. I will pause for a second. Remember the 2 that I did skip actually the mini boss pull, which does set us behind about 8% count. This is okay because this area is also very, very, very efficient. You can chain as much as you like and pull as big as you want, depending on whether or not you have CDs or you have stops available. I would say that if you're in a coordinated setting or have a team, this area is fantastic for count, and I would really recommend trying to build a route around it. I will export this route too to my Discord if you're interested in taking it, as I think it's really fast and actually pretty safe too. It's a lot of fun, and I think Motherlode has a lot of variations, so you can tailor this route to be more comfortable or less comfortable depending on how many kicks you have, what kind of CCs you have, and whether or not you want to perform all of these skips. This route does also include skipping the last 2 War Machines as well as the double Mastermind pull, which I am going to go over in a couple minutes. This is another pretty deadly pull here. As you see, I'm going to pull a Mastermind with these testers and all these alchemists. I am going to this pull. I'm trying to get a hunt off from my glaive. I throw a glaive far to get the other alchemist. I brand the Mastermind, and as well, I'm building a little bit of threat here before I go in and pull in that second weapon tester. I'm not sure if I actually like this pull or not on VDH, as 2 weapon testers is pretty deadly, and I accidentally make a mistake here with the test subjects and don't get them all right away with threats. However, I was able to save a fiery sigil, and that's kind of one of the reasons why you don't want to use them early. If I didn't have a fiery sigil there's a good chance that my druid could have just ripped off those alchemists, and we would have been in a position where he's either running around or just dead. As this pull is now gathered, you can see that a lot of the little guys have already died, and all we're left is with 2 weapon testers, a couple alchemists, and a mastermind. This is a pretty reasonable pull, which isn't too difficult. Because we only have a couple alchemists, we are just coordinating kicks, and my mage is able to blow up that mastermind with his arcane surge. You can see Zyro's absolutely blasting this pack, and it's going to be dead very quickly. You can see by now as well, my cheat death is back up as I go in to pull this next pack, which is going to be 4 alchemists, actually 5 alchemists, a mastermind, and as well all these test subjects. You can see again that kind of what I talked about earlier. Look at how all my platers listed. I do have all these alchemists with a light blue, the mastermind in orange, and just these test subject as a natural blue. I am coordinating stops here as I'm trying to get back to my next silence. We're going in, we're calling Mage 2 here, which is Mage 1, Mage 2, and then Druid's going to be Vortex pushing into Incapacitating Roar. By that point, I am going to call for a Priest Sphere, and as well, Incapacitating Roar, and I should be back to be able to silence the mobs, which is coming up in 3, 2, 1. Now that these mobs are silenced, they should die off in the silence, and we should have time to get back stops like Chaos Nova, Solar Beam in 4 seconds, etc. This is one of the reasons why this kind of god comp is so powerful this season. The amount of stops you have access to, especially while playing Vengeance Demon Hunter in conjunction with playing with the Boomkin, is insane. You are able to easily control these pulls. I will pause here for a second as I want to explain how to skip the double Mastermind pack before the 3rd boss. Rix is really deadly, and we're going to be pulling in War Machines into the boss, as you may or may not have seen before. I would also recommend not doing this if you haven't done this with your healer before, as your healer can get a little bit overwhelmed if you're not careful. The way you have to skip this double Mastermind pack is with either Misery or Cage, and you're going to need your Vengeful Retreat and your Infernal Strikes available. You can choose a side whether or not to run, but this is a meld skip, meaning that similar to the Peacekeeper, you have to get distance when skipping these pulls. You're going to see here that I go in, I'm going to wait, I'm going to be caging the Alchemist on the right to make sure I don't get thrown, and I'm going to be leaping, Vengeful once, Vengeful twice, and getting as much distance as I can away from these double Masterminds. My team runs to the right as I run, to the left as I run right, and I hit that Shadow Meld. We are grouped up, I'm waiting to get a little bit of healing, and I'm going to be pulling this War Machine into boss. Rixa Flux Flame is probably one of the hardest hitting tanking bosses of the entire season, and I never disrespect her. Anytime I pull this boss, I always make sure that I have Feldev and Brand, and I'm making sure I hit both of them right off the rip. There's a couple tricks to tanking this boss just from a damage intake perspective that you should understand. The time where she's going to be meleeing you the most is either between casts of Frondals of the Propellant Blast on your team, or when she transitions to filling up the room with Azerites. These are the times you are going to be weakest as a tank and want to make sure that you have Fiery Brand, Val Devastation, Metamorphosis, or an External. You can see that every time a Propellant Blast fades, I am going to be taking a pretty large spiking melee hit there as I drop very low just from 2 melees. My Vengeance Demon Hunter is quite geared in this video at a whopping 681, so this is not something to be disrespected. As you can see, she is intermissioning now, which is going to be the bulk of my melee damage, and I'm making sure that I have something running. I did call for a pain suppression. As you can see there, it's rolling on me as this boss is transitioning. As the pain suppression fades and I'm moving around, this is also the time where my frailty and my Painbringer stacks are going to be lowest. What do I mean by that? I mean that I can't often hit the boss as I'm moving it. Anytime you can't hit a mob as Vengeance Demon Hunter is when you're going to be weakest, and that's the time in which you should be most careful about using your defensive CDs such as your Meta, your Brand, or calling for external such as Iron Bark, Pain Suppression, Time Dilation, or Guardian Spirit. If you don't have any of these things, you should be clever with your use of Darkness or Health Potion, as they're going to be immensely helpful on this fight. As the first war machine dies, I am hitting a hunt, and I'm going to be glaving this other war machine and bringing it into the boss. You can see there that I hit Metamorphosis, and immediately I'm still getting chunked by Rixa. This boss is no joke at all, and she's just chunking down my health despite being in one of the most powerful defensive cooldowns in the game. I do wait for these two mobs to come in, I Fiery Sigil, and as well I'm rolling Fiery Brand. The reason why we do this pull onto boss is this boss is otherwise pretty painfully boring. There's not a lot of a healing requirement, there's not too much of a DPS requirement, and the tanking requirement is just press your button and rotate. Pulling these war machines in is a massive time save, as between those two pulls of one war machine and then one more war machine with an ordnance specialist, that is 10% count in which we obtain by fighting the boss. This makes it probably the most efficient pull of the entire season, as you're getting 10% count with an entire boss fight kind of for free. You're going to see that a lot of these times I do Motherlode, we actually don't kill the war machine at all, and we're only killing the boss and using the war machine as funnel or cleave. You can help out your team quite a bit here on this encounter by using Sigil of Chains, Chaos Nova, as well as coordinating stops from things like your Druids for Vortex to make sure these Crawler Mines don't hit your team. Again, if you're playing with a team, I would really recommend trying this pull. If you're not playing with a team, I would ask your bugs first to see if they've actually played it before you pull it. I have not cheated on this boss, and this boss does go down, and I'm going to show you how to gather the entire next room in one pull. As this war machine goes down, I am going to be pulling and collecting almost every mine, every ordnance specialist, and one war machine, which will be bringing back down to my team. The reason I like to do it this way is I find that mines often fixate my team, they get stuck, they get annoyed, or they die. If I go and gather this entire area by myself, all the mines will have fixated on me. When all the mines are fixated on me, I'm the only one that has to worry about kiting, while my DPS can worry about doing maximum damage. Again, this is a lot of ordnance specialists, and you're going to see a lot of orange in this pull, as I kind of try to group everything down into a place where my DPS can hit it, and my healer can make sure that he's in range of all of us. We are killing this war machine, we're killing this Crawler Mine, and I'm about to show you how I do this gather. As I mount up on my mounts, I'm going into these first specialists. I'm going to hit a Misery here, as I want them to be in combat by the time my gather is done. And I'm going and running over all of these mines. I'm going to be tagging that far specialist with a glaive, making sure I get this mine active, grabbing a war machine, and tagging every single ordnance specialist with whatever movement I can get. I tag another one here, just with kind of a fracture or a tag with a glaive, and now I'm back grouped into the start. You're going to see that everything is fixated on me, and I want to make sure that I get a really good Sigil of Chains off here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bombs fixated on me, which means none are on my team right now. My imperative is making sure that I can get some threat on these ordnance specialists and the mines, as well as the war machine, and I'm getting everything grouped here as I Nova early into a Sigil of Chains. Now that they're changed, I am going to be calling for a Vortex from my Druid and throwing those Fiery Sigils out. I do actually miss my first one, which was kind of unfortunate. I think I lose a little bit of threat here on one mob later, but now that everything's perfectly grouped, you can see those mines get absolutely blown up, and they're not chasing anybody for long. Because they're all fixated on me, my DPS, all they have to do is worry about is dodging them and blowing them up, and they die within 15 seconds, even on the ski level. I taunt the one ordnance specialist that kind of goes awry, and I'm making sure that I'm just building on the war machine as my arcane mage is blowing it up. I think this pull is actually really easy. If you fight all the ordnance specialists in one, your DPS just have to move for one pull as opposed to having to move for multiple pulls. This is also a massive count pull, which I think is in total worth like 14%. And this can all be done just by you enabling your team on your Vengeance Demon Hunter. I've also been able to do this pull on Monk with a little bit less success. You have to be a little bit more sturdy, and you have to be a little bit more clever about how you use things like your Ring of Peace and your Paralysis. As I go up here, I only have one war machine and some mines to clear up. I'm going to be going and tagging all the mines here, and this is a very important note to take, as you're going to need to clear all these mines out if you do want to skip these last two war machines. They're very easy to just mount and run through, and as you can see, I gather them all. I'm going to go back, tag the war machine with a glaive, hit Fiery Brand on it, and as well, try to orchestrate my team to be in a location where I can get a good Sigil of Chains. I actually might have the worst Sigil of Chains in all of Warcraft history in a second, as I think I literally hit like one mine or something. I dropped that chains there and absolutely nothing gets chains together, so. I think this pull was a little bit more chaotic, and I think albeit it was workable and nobody died, I think there's probably a better way I could have done this. I think if my team stayed back for a little bit longer and let me get all the mines on them, it would have been a lot easier, but I wasn't exactly clear with my call on how I was going to do this, so I do take a little bit of ownership for our messy gather there. Still, nobody died, so we can take this as a W, and I'm going to be showing you guys how you can skip the last 2 war machines as Vengeance Demon Hunter in this dungeon. As the key level scales, you kind of get to a point where fighting the last 2 war machines, even with Lust, can be very dangerous. Not only that, it's a pretty big time waste. When you're fighting 1 war machine, you can easily pull a ton of things into it, like those ordnance specialists, or clean up these mines. I actually think it's a lot faster and a lot more efficient to do this route this way as opposed to fighting these last 2 war machines, and I'm going to show you how you do the skip. You do want your team to be over on the corner in the right hand side, and you're going to be taking these war machines to the left. Again, you will need to be an idol for this, and you will need Shadow Meld, but again, I'm pulling these war machines. I hit my Fell Devastation here in a second as I drop pretty low, and my team is in. I'm going to be jumping over here. Leap once, leap twice, Shadow Meld, and now I'm into the boss. We do decide to Lust on pull. I hit Metamorphosis for damage, I hit that combat pot, and as well, we're going to be blasting the boss. At this point in time, there's nothing really critical that you need to do as a tank, but I will show you a couple things that we did do from a team perspective, which was kind of cool and helps out. We are utilizing the safe spot location on this boss. Anywhere in the corner grate of right underneath where my team is standing is a safe spot that no matter where the machines are flying in the air, you do have a safe spot from the circles on the ground. This is immensely useful for keeping your team stacked. Second, you're going to see that our druid is actually in the far left corner of the screen where my mouse is kind of hovering. The reason why we keep him there is actually for every single time that the Gatling gun happens, we're going to be giving him a power word shield so he never has to move. This is actually also a safe spot, and there are a couple of them on this encounter. The safe spot is used so my druid never has to move and has maximum uptime on this boss, so you can just hit his CDs and blast. You can reperform this with any other class, but we just chose to use a druid there because our mage is highly mobile, and this fixate is only going to target ranged DPS if we have more than one. The way Mogul's rocket fixate works is it will prefer to target ranged players. If you only have one ranged player, it will prefer to target that range first, and then target also melee DPS which have to run out. If you have 2 or more, it will prefer to only swap between those 2 players, only targeting and fixating the druid and the mage. As this intermission happens, we're going to be setting up a marker on this first ad. I'm going to be marking it with Skull for my team, and we are going to be killing it. This is also a fine time to drop Darkness if you are playing it. There's no really other good time to ever play Dark on this fight. It's kind of useless, so I told my healer that I'm just going to drop Dark anyway, even though he said he was strong here. There's absolutely no reason not to use it. As our team gets in the darkness here, you can see that we do get a little bit of value as our team makes it through this drill smash. Again, there's nothing really left to do as a tank in this dungeon, and I'm pretty much just hitting my buttons. With that in mind, that kind of comes to an end of my journey in how I timed my 19 Motherlode with 0 deaths. Hopefully this route was kind of cool, and hopefully it helps explain to you how you do some of the skip suspension Demon Hunter that you might have been struggling with, and picked up some tips and tricks along the way. I really like the taunt Mine Rats after the first boss for that funnel into boss, and I really do like playing a lot of that Azerokk trash. I think once you get the hang of it, skipping that mini boss too is also really efficient. I find that mini boss really scary, and I'm sure you've been in instances where you've been tanking or healing and you might have died to that pull. Anyway, I'll let this video keep playing, but I will say thanks again for all the support. I've had a ton of fun kind of reaching out to comment requests and to DMs about what viewers would like to see next in these videos. Motherlode was a good requested one, and I'm really happy that I got this run done in such a clean way that I could kind of orchestrate and showcase how to do everything right. A lot of my keys, I have a lot of things go wrong, which is okay because it's part of the learning process, but hopefully this one helped you in becoming a better tank, a better demon hunter, or maybe even helped you in a couple tricks on your way to getting title this season. If you have any questions about my UI, about this route, or anything else, feel free to drop something in my Discord or hop on my Twitch stream where I stream pretty regularly. Again, thanks again, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.